Thanks for joining Solicited, a podcast hosted by me, Caitlin,
and me, Nicole,
where we discuss all the challenges related to being a 30-something millennial.
Speaking of that, here's how I know I'm in my 30s and apparently cheap this week. Despite having a little cold, I had to finish a bottle of wine tonight because I opened it 5 days ago, and red wine goes rancid. So I put my comfort aside to finish this gorgeous bottle of Pinot Noir because I refuse to waste it.
I mean, how expensive of a bottle was this?
It was expensive. It was like $15.
Nicole, God love you. $15 is not that expensive. But I understand, because if you really liked the bottle of wine, I don't want to waste it. I understand that. I'm just laughing at the fact that you wouldn't let a $15 bottle of wine go bad.
And it was like a glass and a half. So I had to pony up and finish this glass and a half. But also, like, if you start pouring out $15 bottles of wine, like, where do you stop? Like $18 bottles, $20 bottles? Like, you don't waste wine. You got to drink it. You open it, you drink it.
Unless it's terrible.
Even still, I'd probably drink it. Like, if I bought it, if I purchased it, I'm going to drink it.
I agree. I don't like to waste things like that. And Mike will just be like, oh, that's gross. I'm not eating or drinking that. And we'll want to throw out entire things. And I'm like, no, like, we spend money on that. Or I'm like, oh, we'll just bring it to my family when, we go visit again or something. So clearly can't do that with food, but, alcohol, good times. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, That's funny. I haven't had, here's the other thing. Expensive bottles of wine, man, like the one that Mike and I like the best is probably like $20-ish.
Wow.
Yeah. But I just I'm laughing that you're like, wow, Caitlin, I can't believe you spent $20-something on a bottle of wine. But yeah, no, I really like the Federalist bottle of wine, and I've been really into their red blend. I like a cab, but their cab is good too, but their red blend, I love it. So
usually I stick around $12, if I'm being honest. Like $12, $13. If it's $13.99, I'm not buying it. Like, if it's $12.99, probably, but $13.99, like, absolutely not. So the fact that I spent, like, I think it was $15.99 on this bottle only because it was the holidays. It's like I had to drink it. I had to.
I'm dead. But I cannot wait to tell Mike that someone's cheaper than I am.
Well, and here's the thing, a $20 bottle, like, that's like a special occasion.
Yeah, or it's another Tuesday, Like, I can't. I'm just kidding. I drink so far and few these days now, like, that I would rather have a nice bottle of wine when I'm in the mood for it than I don't drink that much. Baby, breastfeeding, all the fun stuff. And mostly because I'm too tired to drink. I'd rather eat. So, but Mike's also in like a whiskey phase of life, and he's been into buying expensive whiskeys, and that's where our wine money has now been deposited into whiskey money. So good times.
I think that's okay. Also, I saw how many bottles of unopened wine you had at your house, so I think it's fine to shift priorities for the moment.
I also just like to have them in case we have guests, and I'm like, oh, do you want a red? Do you want a white? I have this. Like, I like to have options for when people are over and you're like hosting. So
speaking of knowing you're in your 30s, when I told my friend, oh, I swung by Total Wine and got like, 6 bottles for the holiday, she's like, that's how you know you're an adult, is when you just have house wine for your guests. And I was like, wow, I guess I really am an adult. So you really are, Caitlin.
Yeah, we have the wine rack thing that my mom made me actually when
I didn't know she made that.
Yeah, she made the one in the kitchen that's hanging in our kitchen. And then underneath our table has spots for wine bottles in the dining room, and so I have them under there. And then there's even some on our bar cart. So options.
Wine everywhere.
Speaking of red wine, can we talk about that trip to Jamaica?
where we didn't drink red wine at all, actually. I think we drank margaritas, tequila on the
Definitely.
beach.
And rum punch. And I'm not a big rum girl, but if they're handing you rum punch in Jamaica, you say yes.
100% you say yes. When in Rome.
Well, or in
When
this
in
case, when in
Jamaica.
Jamaica. Jeez.
When in the Caribbean.
Because in Rome, I will definitely be drinking red wine.
Red wine.
Oh my gosh. So, Nicole, you want to share with the crowd how we ended up in Jamaica?
Yes. Okay. The short version is me and my now husband decide to get married. I have this grand idea that we should get married in Jamaica because I've been to Jamaica a couple of times. I love Jamaica. And so he was like, great, let's do that. I also love the beach. So I was like, let's go to Jamaica, get married on the beach. It'll be great. And then as the summer was rolling around, I was starting to get a little worried that I was like about to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to have a wedding somewhere I had never been. So I don't know that I really talked you into anything, Caitlin, but what happened is I suggested you should come with me to Jamaica and check out my wedding venue, and you were into it. So you and I hopped a plane and spent like 5 days in Jamaica.
Yes, and I remember when you were like, "Hey, would you be interested in going to check out my wedding venue with me in Jamaica?" I was like, "Is that even in a question?" Yes, like if it means traveling, I'm in. And especially with you too, we travel so well together. But I thought it was hilarious too because I'm like, "You don't want to take your soon-to-be husband with you on this trip?" And you were like, "Yeah, no, he's fine. He'll be fine." Like I recall. But the funny thing about us going to Jamaica was we were supposed to go in June after my bachelorette party, and nothing goes right when you're planning a wedding or you're going to events. And yeah, what happened to you? Why did you not show up at my bachelorette party, Nicole? Huh?
It was my birthday and like a week before, and I got invited to go to a dive bar with some of my friends. So we went to this dive bar and sang karaoke with strangers on a Friday night. And then I got COVID from doing that. And so then I couldn't come to your bachelorette party, but I also couldn't go to Jamaica when we had originally planned to.
Exactly. And this was in the summer of 2021. So like COVID still pretty rapid happening, popping up everywhere. And the funniest thing to me is that you were one of my friends that was very like followed the COVID protocols, like really didn't do things. And then right before you have this trip, you're like, I'm going to go live my best life for my, what was it? I guess your
It
birthday.
was 2022.
Oh, shoot. You're right. Yeah,
It was
you're
2022.
100% right. Oh my God,
And
Caitlin.
it was like my 32nd birthday. It was like not a big, it was, no, sorry.
It was. We are 32.
It was my 31st birthday. I don't fucking know, but it wasn't like a milestone birthday.
It was 31 because we just turned 32 this year. Duh.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
So do we even count ages once you turn 30? Because I look at Mike all the time and I'm like, wait, how old am I again? And he does the same thing all the time and we have to figure out how old we are. I just know I'm not 40. Like, I know that.
I know I'm somewhere between 30 and 40. I legitimately asked Nick like probably a week ago, like legitimately looked at him and go, are we 32 or 33? Like, I don't know. And he had to tell me. So
okay, that makes me feel better. It's not just me and Mike because I mean, Mike will be 35 in April and he asks me all the time. He's like, how old am I again? So, okay. Phew,
God forbid I married somebody who wasn't the exact same age as me, that I'd have to remember how old I am and how old they are. It would be impossible.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. So back to Jamaica.
Yes.
Nothing, like I said, goes right when you're planning a wedding. And then we had to like revamp and redo everything. You didn't come to my bachelorette party, which
was a bummer.
I'll forgive you someday, but like I'm glad you didn't come and spread COVID around, obviously. But and we made up for it at your bachelorette party in Vegas for sure. And in Jamaica. So
And you kind of got like another bachelorette party because then you got to like, you know, I don't know, in a weird way. You got to do your party and then you got to travel. You got like 3 because then you had another bachelorette party with different people. So you had yours.
And I had another one because my coworkers are awesome and they did a whole thing for me too where we wore like wigs out and we went drinking and I have never been so sick after that night out. So moving on.
So we go to Jamaica. I had planned, so this whole trip revolved around the venue. So the goal of this trip was see the venue. That was really get a feel for the food, get a feel for what they're like actually offering us, get a feel for like, is this the place to be? And I think it's important to know that I went into that thinking this is definitely it. It's kind of just like I'm just checking a box here and getting to go on vacation. But
Dun
it
dun
ended
dun.
it ended up just being a girls trip, and you and it was nice having you there because you talked me off the ledge.
I talked you off the cliff as we were staying at the cliffs. Well, I'll never forget. I will never forget us. It was a 90-minute car ride. We'll talk travel tips at the end of this, but like the story needs to happen first because it's just too great. It was about an hour and a half car ride there. Like we hadn't seen each other in a while. We're chit chatting, we're catching up, and we're talking about all the great things that we're going to do in Jamaica. And we pull up to where our hotel was, and the look on your face was like, what did I just get myself into? We walked through the doors of our room. You get hit with that puff of heat because it was so hot in our room. And you looked at me and you're like, did I just make the biggest mistake ever? And and I had to tell you, wait a minute, we haven't seen anything. Like, give it a second. Like, we're going to figure this out. And I had to keep telling you, nothing is set in stone.
You did. And you're right. I remember walking in and it was so hot. So it was actually very nice, but it was very like, so the inside was nice. It was like a little bit drab on the outside. So immediately I was like, this was not the vibe I was expecting. We walk into this like 2-story place and it looked nice. Like, would you agree? Like the inside was nice. We had like mostly.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
I wouldn't say it was a 5-star place at all. I would give it maybe 3.5. Honestly.
but it was like an average Hilton. It wasn't a Motel 8, but it wasn't like a Four
agreed.
Seasons. Yeah, it was like an average Hilton or like something like that. It was so fucking hot. And I just remember being so tired I had traveled from Colorado to the fucking Caribbean that day. So I had been traveling for like 10 fucking hours and I was so goddamn hungry. And so fucking hot because it's July in fucking Jamaica and I just remember you soothing me like a child. You pulled snacks out. I actually remember you taking snacks. There was like a day bed on the first floor and you like just threw snacks on the day bed and I was like, "Oh my god, thank god." And
travel tip number 1, always have snacks because your girl ain't pretty when I'm hangry. And Mike learned this about me real quick. So whenever we go on a trip, my backpack is pretty much all snacks and a book. Like that's all my backpack ever is when I go on a trip. So Pringles, nuts, granola bars. You also got to have some candy, chocolate. I've got it all. So I had to give you some food. We got some water in you. We went outside and we kind of like looked at the place and you're like, okay, like you took some deep breaths. But actually, I remember us going upstairs in our villa, but we had to keep that door closed upstairs the whole time in order for that air to work up there. And that was like, you and we can slum it, but we're also a little bit bougie, I think, as we've gotten older, is like we like AC. Like AC is a non-negotiable for me if I'm traveling somewhere where it's hot. Like that
AC is yes. Like hard, yes. Here's the thing, and we're going to get to this. Would I go back here? I actually would, but we'll get into the details of why. But you have to remember, like, I was coming into this mindset. I remember saying to you multiple times, like, I'm going to get married here. Like, I'm asking 50 people to travel across the country, out of the country. And is this, if I just made that ask of people, is this worth it? Like, are people going to show up and be fucking pissed that they don't have air conditioning? And the answer is going to be resounding yes. People are going to be pissed. So,
I mean, especially because I remember us talking while we were in Jamaica too, like more than like 80-90% of the people that were coming to your wedding were coming from the West Coast, whereas your Florida people, it took me like 2 hours to get to Jamaica, like a hop, skip, and a jump. The humidity is like sucks, like all of this. So after traveling all that way, and then you pull up to kind of where we were, they were doing renovations and doing things and like updating things while we were there. So I think that kind of killed your vibe a little bit too when we first went there. Like, do you remember the guy that was like raking leaves, and then there were people painting like another villa, and you were just like, holy crap, what did I just do? And yeah, I had to talk you off a ledge, moral of the story. And I think the hard part for both of us was we went outside by our pool area, and then like they had a lot of damage, like storm damage, because it's the Caribbean and, you know, hurricanes, all the things. And so there was a lot of damage to their outside area. But then when you looked at the hotel that was to the right of us, and it looked bougie AF, and you were like, what?
It's like, how do I get there?
You were like, let's figure this out. And I remember you walking out front of our hotel and walking to go over there, and we went and talked to the security guard, because the thing in Jamaica is there's a security guard pretty much outside of every single hotel there, making sure that you're either a guest checking in or wondering what the heck you're doing lurking, like trying to get up in their area. And so this guy was like, can I help you? Like, was not very nice when we first went over there, and they had said that they were closed for a private event, and like people, they had rented out the whole place, that whole hotel. And so thankfully, didn't we call later that week and then got an appointment? I'm almost positive.
That's what happened. I called, and I just said like, oh, I'm, you know, in the country trying to plan my wedding. I want to come tour your facility. And then they booked us like that Thursday. It was a day after this thing was over. Mm-hmm.
I do remember that. And yeah, so that place was super nice. I think for the listeners, we should probably kind of tell them a little bit about where we were. So the place that you were planning on getting married was called Idle Awhile. So chill for a little bit, stay a little while, like that's the vibes. And they also had multiple locations. They had Idle Awhile the Cliffs and Idle Awhile the Beaches. And I remember you were going to get married at the Cliffs because you wanted to get married like out on that pretty area. But when we walked out there, we're like, you couldn't fit 50 people on this little walkway. And somebody would have fallen in that water. 100%. 100%. And then you planned on staying down at Beaches, though, in a house. And wasn't it like a 15 or 20-minute shuttle ride to the next location?
Yeah, and they shuttle between the locations. So you could just like hop in the van and go, because so the one at the Cliffs has a pool, and the one at the Beaches does not. So their guests can go between the two, get the pool day, get the beach day, and they accommodate that.
Yeah, which was cool. And for us, we were supposed to stay more nights at the Cliffs, right? I'm almost positive we were supposed to stay more nights, and then you called and said, hey, do they have something available at Beaches? And they got us there sooner.
Well, I was a pain in the ass because in my panic, I was like, get me the fuck out of here. And so you're right. And she had us move to the Beaches. And then we had that gorgeous, beautiful day at the pool. And I was like, this isn't so bad. And we had the whole pool to ourselves, and I jumped in the ocean and got to swim, and we had drinks and lunch, and it was kind of fucking awesome. So then I was like, maybe we stay here. So then I extended again. So I went back and forth.
You're right. I do recall that. And I think the other thing that I want to point out is that it felt like we had a private hotel to ourselves when we stayed at the Cliffs. Like nobody else was there. There was like one other couple there, an older couple that was next door to us, because we were playing Phase 10 out on the patio that one night that it was raining, or afternoon it was raining, and they were outside like looking, because we could see hummingbirds coming up to the little flowers and getting their goodies. So, okay. Jamaica specific. Well, let's tell people what ultimately made you decide not to get married in Jamaica.
I think ultimately, so we did tour that other place and it was going to be just a ridiculous amount of money. I think they quoted me modestly at like $50,000. Like that was the floor. And I was like, what? This other place was quoting me the floor at like 25. So I was like, what the fuck? So I think it was ultimately going, I'm not going to spend $50,000 at this other place. And I don't feel like I can make this ask of people given the accommodations. And that's not a dig on the accommodations. It's I would go back. It's a dig on I can't ask people to travel 12 hours across the world to not have air conditioning. Like I can't do that. I'm not willing to do that. It's a huge ask. It's expensive.
But
It's
there
going to be a
was,
pain.
yeah, there was air conditioning. It's just not the air conditioning I think the world is used to. Like feeling cool when you go to bed at night. And you know what? We made that room pretty dang cold. We figured out how to tweak that remote for us
Well,
Florida
yeah.
girls.
Yeah, but I also think it was like so remember the villas? We got to tour the villas.
Yeah.
If they were all like the villas, yeah. But they weren't. So I think I just know like Nick's family, for instance, they're just a little bougier. And so I just didn't think it was. And could people have stayed elsewhere? Sure, they could have stayed elsewhere. But I think ultimately I was just like, you know what?
You hadn't made a decision before we left. I think in your heart of hearts, you knew this was not going to happen, but you wanted to go home and talk to Nick. And I told you, go home, talk to Nick, figure it out, because you were pretty gung ho on the cliffs next door, the place that we scoped out from your original wedding venue. And we looked over and we're like, let's get over there. Like the pool was nice. They had little hot pool springs. You could jump off the cliffs into the water there safely, not like our place. And why I didn't do it, because you just went full-fledged into the water.
Safe. It was
dude
safe.
dude no, there was
a rope and buoys once you got in there.
yeah, a rope and buoys, but like that ladder was like hanging on by a thread and not good. I didn't jump because there was no way I was going to be able to get my butt back out of that water. And plus, mind you, we're at the cliffs, people. The water was not smooth. It was rough. And I mean, I'm a good swimmer, but Nicole's definitely a better swimmer than me.
As I recall, Caitlin, they didn't have the ladder in. I had to swim.
You swam to the other hotel that was next door and then crossed barefoot over all the rocks. And there was a ton of rocks. Definitely not safe zone. And no, that's a no.
Mm-hmm.
I sat and I read my book and I watched you swim very happily. So I felt like a mom watching you, like making sure that you weren't going to die in the ocean. Like I feel like your mom would have been so proud of me watching you.
She didn't watch me when I was swimming in the ocean. Come on, you've been to the beach with my mom. So what did you think? Ultimately, what was your takeaway from the cliffs?
I really liked the privacy. Maybe it's because they were really doing construction and stuff on some of those rooms there. And we paid more to have the cliff view, if you recall. There were villas that were up further into the entrance of where the hotel was, and they didn't have a view. And I remember there was somebody staying in one of those because they would constantly walk to the pool. But I swear there was only like six, maybe 8 people there, including us, that was staying there, but we never saw each other.
Yeah, so I think the pro is small privacy.
And it just was quiet. Like if you're looking for quiet and,
gorgeous. I mean, the view really was incredible.
Yeah, it was really pretty. I do agree with that. But the only thing is that the downside was that it was far from a lot of things. Like you had to have a car in order to get anywhere over by that location. Whereas the Idle Awhile Beaches location, you could walk places and it was much more walkable to not just things in the resort area.
Yes, the only place we walked when we were at the cliffs was to that little shop that had the key lime pie. Do you remember that?
I do remember that, but that was like a little ways up the road too.
Yeah, I mean, not like far though.
Yeah.
Quarter mile, half mile?
Yeah, but there was nothing else there. It was grassy and like nothing.
But
Dirt
the key
road.
lime pie was worth it. The key lime pie was good, dude.
I don't like key lime pie. You ate it by yourself, remember?
I would have eaten it by myself regardless of your appetite for it. But yeah, no. Yeah, but you're right. The beaches was much more walkable, and we did kind of party when we were down by the beaches. Definitely a little bit more of like a, if you wanted it. You didn't have to, but it was very accessible to you to go out to the bars and
Exactly. So Jamaica, it was hard for us because we were pretty much there doing like wedding stuff and trying to squeeze in the fun. So we ended up staying, for our listeners, we ended up staying at the Idle Awhile Cliffs first for 2 nights, and then Idle Awhile Beaches for 2 nights, right? 2, 3 nights? I can't remember how many nights, but we were there 5 or 6 days.
I want to say it was like 3 and 2, something like that.
I think you're right. And so we stayed at a couple nights at both places to get the little taste, because Nicole's guests were going to have both of these options for both of these hotels. So we wanted to be able to give recommendations to people of what to do, what was good, what wasn't good, like what we recommended. So we stayed at the cliffs. We did our stuff at the cliffs. We had to get a car to go to dinner. We went to dinner our first night somewhere over there. We went to Ivan's. That was recommended. Here's a travel tip from Caitlin right here. This is what I do wherever I go and whenever I travel. I always ask people that have been there before or are traveling around you, like getting off the airplane, like if they've been there before or where they're staying. And then whenever you're in an Uber or a transport, I always ask what places they would recommend, because the locals know best. That's just my thoughts. Like, I have done the touristy traveling, and I like to get a little bit of the touristy stuff because sometimes that's why you go to a location. But I wanted to know what people recommended to do there. So I remember asking our driver when we were driving out to the cliffs, like, what are some good restaurants around here? What do you suggest? And he said that, a lot of people ate at Ivan's, and we were like, okay, let's go try it. And isn't that where you got the branzino?
Probably. I remember I got a whole fish. I think I got a couple whole fish, actually. I was taste testing all the whole fish in Negril.
Yeah. So Nicole does seafood. I do not. But I remember just the food in Jamaica is very delicious. So definitely ask the locals or people what suggestions they have, or do research on your own before you go and hope that people write reviews, because that's important. So when we were staying up at the cliffs, we stayed at Ivan's, and we also ate at Ivan's. And then we also, when we were staying at the cliffs, ate at Pushcart, which was a restaurant and a rum bar in Negril. And that was the one on the water, and we could see the sunset, and it was really pretty. It had just rained, so we didn't know if it was going to rain again or not. And the margaritas were delicious. Like, I really liked Pushcart too. I had jerk chicken, duh.
The vibe at Pushcart was better than the vibe at Ivan's. Neither of the meals are standout for me, though. The standout meal was what was it called, Caitlin?
Specifically, when we stayed at Idle Awhile Beaches, we went across the street to this little hut. Like, it was not I wouldn't even call it a restaurant. Yes, it had tables and chairs, but it's like legit a type of tent type thing that you would see on the beach. And it was called... Go ahead.
Do you also remember they literally had lawn chairs at their tables?
Oh yeah. I recall.
It was great.
And like the plastic tablecloths that you have like growing up at your grandparents' house, like that was the vibe. And that place was across the street from Idle Awhile Beach location. literally across the street. And it was called Best in the West Cocktail Bar and Jerk Chicken. And that was hands down the best meal we had there the whole time. It was delicious. And across from the beaches, we then walked to the Boardwalk Shopping Village is what it's called. And I remember it was a little bit shady of a walk at night, and it was fine. And it was great. Like, we walked, we got to that village, the little shopping village. It was night, so a lot of the things were closed, but that popsicle stand, the Chill Pops popsicle stand, delish. So good.
And I think that's why we headed that way, right? Was for the popsicle. Somebody had told us about the popsicles, because that's the other thing that you do and I have adopted a little bit, is talking just a little bit to other people when you're traveling, because you want to, like, they'll tell you, you know, if you find people that aren't too fucking chatty or creepy, then they'll tell you all the good stuff they've already found, and then you can just do those things. So I feel like somebody told us about this popsicle place and it was awesome.
Yeah, and your girl doesn't discriminate against desserts. So, after we went to Chill Pops, though, we walked across the street from there, and then we walked to the beach back. And that's when we wound up at that bar on the beach, and those people were dancing and drumming, and I can't remember the name of that place, but if you walk along the beaches anywhere near lots of restaurants, lots of bars, lots of activities. The nightlife was fun, like, in that area. You could tell it was popping. Do you have standout moments at Idle Awhile beaches?
The first night, so remember, after our first night at the cliffs, we went down the next day to the beaches. Was it the very next day? It must have been, because I remember finding my nirvana in banana pancakes. So I remember getting to beaches. They have this really cute outdoor area where you eat. The bar is outdoors. So I, like, literally breakfast this one morning is a standout moment. You sit on their little outdoor area. You can see the ocean. Their breakfast was really freaking good. Good coffee. And that is, like, legit a standout. Also standout meal, standout moment. Paddleboarding at the beaches was really great. So that's the other cool thing, is remember they had paddleboards and kayaks just available to the guests there. So it was really cool. The days that we were there, I think we paddleboarded every day, and that was amazing. And our last day, standout moment, Caitlin, our last day, do you remember I whipped out the paddleboard? I think we Moana'd it, 2 people on one paddleboard.
We did. I sat my pretty little butt right there while you Moana'd us.
And then we got mimosas at the bar and drank our mimosas in the ocean before we had to leave for the day. Do you remember that?
I do. And I also remember when we were at beaches, I do remember getting a couple people that came up to us on the beaches, and that's crap that I cannot stand. Like, I know that these people are hustling and trying to make a living, but thankfully the people that work at Idle Awhile, they, like, had their eye on you, and they made sure to tell people to, like, piss off, which was kind of nice. So they made sure that we were taken care of, and, like, nobody was really hassling or bothering us too much. And I felt safe absolutely the entire time, the entire trip, everywhere we went. And I do want to say there was a couple other places that people recommended to us that we didn't make it to. People recommended Rock House as a restaurant to us, and Rick's Cafe. And we didn't make it there by land, but we ended up watching people jump off the cliffs by boat, because Nicole and I did do an excursion. We only did one excursion. We booked that directly through Idle Awhile to go on a catamaran, like, sunset type cruise. And one of the stops was Rick's Cafe. So they tender you to Rick's. And so you and I, like, it was so crowded on our little catamaran, because we were there in July, people, very summer, very busy, lots of people from all over the world, because this specific place that we went to, we booked it through Idle Awhile, but it was people from all over different resorts on that catamaran. And so we watched people jump off as we were sitting on our catamaran enjoying the free rum punch. Like, I just remember that.
Yeah, I remember us going, no, that's because it was packed. That Rick's was freaking packed. And we just were like, nope, we're going to stay on this boat alone and drink. And I actually remember falling asleep in like the little, if you've ever been on a catamaran, they have like these net hammocks. And I just remember like napping in the net hammock and waiting for everybody to come back. And it was pretty awesome.
Oh, yes. It was really nice out that day, too. And I was just watching person after person jump in, like off the cliff and into the water. And I did not, the reason why I didn't do that, too, is because I was not in an appropriate bathing suit to be jumping off the cliffs. Like, that would have not worked out for anybody. I would have come back without a bathing suit top, 100%. Not good for anybody. Yeah, so we did that activity and I really enjoyed the catamaran adventure. That was super fun.
Would you say that is a high for you?
Oh yeah, that was definitely a highlight. Like if we're talking standout, like I like to do things like that. The only thing I would say that I would maybe want to change is maybe doing a snorkeling type thing, and because I like to see what's going on under the water as well as what's going on top. I did like that was a sunset cruise because we got a really pretty view of the sunset that night, and it was also nice not getting off the catamaran personally. I think I would have considered getting off if I had a different bathing suit on and if it wasn't so crowded when we looked up there, because you had just gotten over COVID and you were like, yeah, I'm good. Peopled out, like trying to plan a wedding.
It was also a party scene. Do you remember they were like black? I mean, it was just looked like an absolute just party scene, and that was not the vibe. It was like daylight out. I was like, I'm not ready for that.
I think that we were also in the deepness of wedding planning, so it was a little chaotic.
Agreed.
If you're looking to kind of like ball on a budget and go to Negril, Jamaica, I think Idle Awhile beaches, I think I would probably rather stay at beaches because you're closer to more things. But I would also, I don't know, I'm the type of person, and since I've been dating Mike, he likes to stay at multiple locations when we go on trips because you get to experience different things. So I love that we did that on this trip. So we got a little taste of both. Like we got the privacy and the beauty of the cliffs, and then we got the fun and activities and adventures, the paddle boarding, the close food, the bars, all at the beaches location.
Mm-hmm.
So let me talk some more specific Jamaica advice. Like, so I'm in Florida. I booked my flights and I flew Spirit on the way there. Yes, my flight made it because everyone hates Spirit. And don't get me wrong, your girl just needed a cheap flight. I was planning a wedding myself and we had already canceled the previous flights, and thankfully I think I got a refund, but then I had to try and rebook with using that money. And so I booked on the way there Spirit, and I had a freaking layover in Fort Lauderdale before going all the way to Jamaica, so it made my flight longer, but the flight home, like typically it's like 2 hours 20 minutes to get to Jamaica from Orlando, and I just had a carry-on. Pro tip, I paid for boarding first. So the next thing is definitely, like I had said previously, find a hotel that will arrange the transport to and from the airport, because it's so helpful. Instead of having to go find another company and do everything, the hotel had your flight information and itinerary. There was somebody waiting there with like a sign ready for us. Like, I like that kind of stuff when you know what's happening.
The other thing about transportation, a lot of these restaurants we went to, they will come pick you up and take you back to your hotel. So when we were staying up in the cliffs, kind of away from things, we called places like Ivan's and the Pushcart, and they sent a car to come get us. And I think we just tipped them a little bit of money, but otherwise it was free.
Yes, 100%. That's another pro tip. They don't really have like Uber and stuff there. You have to like book taxis or book a pickup.
Caribbean drivers are some of the craziest I've ever experienced. If you want to brave a taxi, it's a once in a lifetime experience. But even I think the people at the hotel will tell you, like, use other transportation, but they do have taxis.
Yes. It is wild. I do remember looking at you in one of our rides and being like, what the heck? What is going to happen? Are we going to live through this car? Do you remember the guy that was on his phone the whole time driving us?
No, but that doesn't surprise me at all.
So the place that if you are in Negril, Jamaica, that you don't want to miss is Best in the West Cocktail Bar and Jerk Chicken. And if you eat meat, you better get the jerk chicken. It was delicious. So Jamaica turned out to be the best girls trip. My husband was very, very, very upset because you decided to pull a 180 and say, yeah, we're not getting married in Jamaica. Mind you, after you already sent save the dates out, like cute little magnets that was on my fridge. And when I told Mike that you were getting married in Vegas and not Jamaica, I wish I could have recorded his response because he was not happy. He was actually pretty pissed off. He's like, you got to go to Jamaica this summer and I didn't get to go and I want to go. And I just told him we'll go back. Like there's a lot of places you can go in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like a lot of people honeymoon there. It's a quick flight, especially for anybody that's on the East Coast. West Coast is a little bit more of a stretch. And it turned out to be like, I'm just like a firm believer in everything happens for a reason. And, you know, I'm glad we went and scoped it out because I can't imagine your wedding being any different than it was now after you just did it in Vegas. And our Jamaica trip, as stressful and as much as I had to talk you off a cliff, literally, it worked out. And like, we had a great time. Would I go back to Jamaica with you? 100%, 3,000,000%. Like, also, let's tell our listeners because Nicole and I have vacationed together a handful of times.
So let me ask you this. High, low of the trip, and what would you do different next time?
Okay. High of the trip was definitely Catamaran for me. That avocado toast at the
Cliffs
resort that we tried to break into from our area. That resort was called the Cliff Negril, which was right next door to the Idle Awhile cliffs. And also, just so you know, this is a PSA as I'm thinking of it. There are all-inclusive places that you can stay at in Jamaica. That's just not mine and Nicole's vibes, and we can talk about that on another thing.
And you got some recommendations, I think, when we were there. So we'll put them all in our show notes along with all the other recommendations.
Yeah, for sure. Someone suggested Couples Swept Away in Negril. That was like a really good all-inclusive vibe. But definitely the Catamaran, definitely the avocado toast that I had at the Cliff. I think about that avocado toast a lot. And I think about the pancakes at Idle Awhile were actually delicious. Like, I don't know what they do to them to make them so good, but they were delicious. I think really just liked our chill day on the beach. Like we just sat, we drank, we swam. Funny story. Do you remember when the storm started rolling in and we were swimming in the ocean and there were people from, I want to say like Montana out in the ocean or Kentucky was, I know that one of those places out westish. And they're in the ocean and lightning starts going off and you and I dart out of the ocean. Like we jump as quick as we can and start going because that lightning was close. Thunder, lightning, started raining. And they're like, where are you going? You afraid of a little storm? And we're like, we grew up in Florida and our moms would kill us if we stayed in the water. Plus, I'm not about to get fried out in the ocean. No thanks. Bye.
Not the vacation I'm looking for. No.
Yes. Yeah. And they stayed in the water. They stayed in the water. I recall that. And that storm was not cute. So
what would be the thing you would do differently?
I think for me, I would definitely want a longer trip because I felt like we didn't have a lot of time for more activities and we did do a lot of chilling, which I needed, but I would want a longer trip and probably just like another excursion or two. And I would go back to Negril again. I really would. I think I would stay somewhere a little more bougier personally. But I would stay there again depend if the price is right and saving me a ton of money, because it wasn't a bad place. I need to like preface that. It was not a
No,
bad place.
I think here's what it is. There's not a lot of accommodations. Like think about it's just like you walk in and it's the hotel and you keep walking towards the beach at beaches and you've got a place to eat in a bar and that's the entire place. Like there's not
It's not a
multiple
resort.
places to
Yeah.
eat. There's not even an indoor place to eat. The only place to eat is outdoors. Like it's not a resort. There's not a place to work out. There's not multiple buildings. It's like one or two, I think they had like maybe 4 buildings. So, 4 buildings on like a half an acre of land on the beach. Like that is what it is. So, it's not a lot of room to wander. It's just like you're kind of on this property. So I get the appeal of staying somewhere larger where you can wander a little bit more, you can explore a little bit more, you can eat in multiple places, indoor, outdoor, but that is not this. This is like very simple, very down home. Yeah.
And again, I loved the vibes. And again, I would stay there again, but I'm also just the type of person that unless I like super loved a place, I like to do new things or try new places. I will go back to the same location again, but I want to probably stay somewhere else. Does that make sense? Like experience something a little different.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I would say for me, the one thing I would do different is they have this really cool, I can't remember if it's Plantations. So Plantations is a Jamaican rum, which is also very good. I'm not a rum drinker, but Plantations rum is very good if you're looking for a rum for like a mojito or something. They have, I can't remember if it's them or a different Jamaican rum distillery. It's not super close to Negril. It's like maybe an 1 to 3 hours. I know that's like a wide range, but they do tours and it's this massive distillery. It's like the biggest rum distillery in Jamaica. And I would have really liked to go there. That would have been cool.
Yeah, I could get down with a little rum tour. Um, so would you stay in Negril again, or would you want to stay in other places in Jamaica?
Well, okay. So I've been to multiple places in Jamaica. I've been to Jamaica like 2 or 3 times. I would go back to Negril. I would also go to other places.
Yeah. I feel
I
the same way.
I think it depends on what you want. So I remember reading that Negril is like one of the biggest tourist places in Jamaica, which is actually crazy because it's not a huge town at all. It's mostly beach resorts and a little bit of shopping. So it doesn't feel touristy in the way that like Cancun feels touristy, but it is heavily populated with visitors. So that's not generally a place that I would gravitate towards, but it isn't like a Cancun. It feels still calmer and chiller. So I would definitely go back. Yeah.
Um, I agree with that. And like going back to the resorts thing that we were talking about, it was like the vibes in Negril was much more like slow, chill vibes. It wasn't so sandals and like hard rock cafe type things. So that was not the vibes that I got. There is just so much to do in Negril. You can ATV tour, you can horseback ride, you can snorkel, you can um visit Rick's Cafe and like shopping. I remember there was a mineral springs area as well that you could go to, and there was like the catamaran cruise that we did, as well as the rum tour. There was an Appleton Estate, and then like
That's the rum. Yeah, that's the
yeah,
rum.
I remember it was Appleton Estate, and then a falls type tour. They have the glass bottom boats that you can go on and tour, and I felt like I saw people horseback riding too. So I just there's a lot of things that Negril has to offer, and I would go back. I would. I especially like I would go back even with like a couple. I think Negril is a cool place to go for a couples trip because it's like good vibes. And
Or like a small group trip, I think, even. Like if you're a
oh
group
yeah.
trip kind of person. Mm-hmm.
I gotta be honest though, I don't think I would not Negril is not the type of place you want a honeymoon, I don't think, personally.
I don't think so.
I think that there's like nicer places to honeymoon in Jamaica if you really like are going for a honeymoon type thing. Like Negril is like a whoop whoop, like, or chill, calm vibes. Like it just wasn't, I think, bougie enough for it to be a honeymoon destination.
Yeah. The other thing I want to leave us with here is the thing that changed my life about this trip. Do you know what I'm going to say?
Always pack snacks. Is that what it is?
No. Do you remember that sorcerer that came up and talked to us on the beach? She said she was like 40.
Yes. Okay. We are at Idle Awhile beaches, minding her own business. This chick had a kid with her, and her and her husband were staying. They'd been coming to Idle Awhile for years. I remember them saying they've been coming for years. And that's why you talk to people around you, because they had a whole bunch of, they were the ones that told us to go across the street and get the jerk chicken from there.
Yes. Yep. Accurate. And they may have even told us about the popsicles. That would actually make a lot of sense. So we get to chatting with her, and we find out she's from like the Baltimore area. She's a hairstylist. She owns her own salon. Like Caitlin said, they've been coming here for years. They were just trying to get away. And we're saying something, and we're like, how old are you? And she tells us she's like 45. How do you have any recollection? She was in her 40s.
Yes, young 40s.
She did not look a day past 35.
I thought she was our age. No joke. Like, truly.
And she tells us that the reason she looks so fucking good is because she's been getting Botox since she was 29 years old.
I missed out. I missed that window.
So that was crazy. And your girl went 2 months later, got some Botox.
I remember you calling me before you made your appointment, and you were like, Caitlin, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go get Botox like that chick told us on the beach in Jamaica. She's like, you were like, I'm going to do it. But then you started to panic a little bit because you didn't want your face getting stuck. And this was like right before my wedding. And I told you, I was like, I can't do this right before my wedding. God forbid I can't move my face and or something goes wrong. Like, I'm not doing it. And I never did it. And also, nothing against Botox, but I am so like crunchy about things, about like what you put in your body and on your body, that
get Botox.
Just like, I can't with you. I can't. But actually, I remember you sending me your pictures like of your face all scrunched up and then not scrunched, and you're like, this shit works.
Look at me, dude. This is still, I haven't gotten Botox in like a year. Look at.
Yeah, and mind you, here's my poor little face. Do you see all these wrinkles?
Oh, I do. Yeah. No, I do.
Rude. But yeah, I will say the Botox worked well for you.
Thanks. I'm going next month.
Stop. I think you need to tell the people. So, sometimes at Christmas you get a little extra cash, and you don't know what to do with it. But what did you barter with your husband?
I said, baby, I got this little performance bonus. Could baby get some Botox? And he said, yeah. I said, remember when you bought that thing for yourself a couple months ago?
Yeah, and bought 2 things for himself. And you're like, yeah, your girl's going to go treat herself. I love it.
So I just had to bide my time, dude. Had to wait until I had enough leverage. And then I was like, can I get some Botox, you think? He was like, go for it. Wonderful.
Does he notice a difference when you get Botox?
I mean, I think the obvious answer is yes, of course. But I think, can you ask more specifically? Like, every day he's not going to me, wow, what's this 12-year-old doing in my house? Like, it's not like that. But I think like if I show him, he sees the difference.
Okay, that's good. Mike and I had watched like like Selling Sunset and all those shows with the on Selling Sunset, whatever. And I had to point out to him like through the seasons of when they got Botox and like why their foreheads and things don't move. And he's like, oh, that's interesting. Now that you pointed it out, like I notice it. And we both notice like both of our wrinkles on our faces, Mike and I. So yeah, we'll see. I'll see if Botox fits into my life at some point. I think the problem is that I'm gonna end up wanting it when it's too late and my face is already like a goner. And maybe I needed to be preventative this whole time.
And that's the trick. I think somebody else had told me long before this witch on the beach told me about this, that I'm not saying everybody should go get Botox at 29 years old. And if you catch it before the damage is done, that prevents you from getting that like plasticky, stiff, housewifey face. This chick on the beach did not have a plasticky looking face at all.
I couldn't even tell she had Botox. Let me
No,
just
if you
point that
get
out
it
to the listeners.
if you get it before like the collagen breaks down and before the wrinkles, like this is not real talk, but if before the wrinkles like harden, right, that you can like if you by numbing you prevent the wrinkles from ever forming, so it'll just create some longevity.
Go to Jamaica. You might meet somebody that has great Botox and encourage you to go.
Don't get Botox in Jamaica though. 10 out of 10 do not recommend that.
So sorry. Yes, let's be very clear about that.
Be very
clear.
My gosh.
Oh my god.
If you're sitting here trying to remember that place that Caitlin was talking about, that one place that you really are interested in, check out the show notes. They're all going to be there. All of the recommendations talked about, all the places that we went, even the places we didn't go that were recommended to us. So no need to rewind. Just check out the show notes.
If you have questions, email us, reach out to us. Make sure to stop what you're doing right now. And if you're feeling this podcast, then we need a couple things from you. Make sure you find and follow us on Instagram at Solicited the Podcast. I'll share some pictures of our Jamaica trip on there so y'all can see what we're talking about, the vibes, the looks, the hotels, the food, all the good stuff. And rate this episode, share it with your friends. If you have any topics you want us to cover, email us at solicitedthepodcast@gmail.com. And definitely email or DM us your favorite travel destination, or have you been to a destination wedding? We'd love to hear your stories. And of course, we will share them anonymously, so your name will never be put on blast on the podcast. Peace out.